Want to welcome you guys back to another episode of Pistons Talk Podcast presented by FanDuel. I really wish we could start our first weekend podcast in 2026 on more positive news. We got to start it off with the injury report. Now, the Detroit Pistons medical staff put out an injury report for three players that are dealing with injuries right now. And we're going to go over each of these injuries. I do have the Detroit Pistons medical update from their public relations team on the screen. So if you guys want to read it along with me, if you're watching live on YouTube, if you're an audio listener, don't worry. I'll be reading the injury report so you guys can listen to it as well. It says Detroit Pistons medical update. The Detroit Pistons released injury updates on the following players. Player number one is Tobias Harris. It says Pistons forward Tobias Harris, left hip sprain, will not travel with the team to Cleveland and will be reevaluated in 2 weeks. So Tobias Harris hurt his hip on the West Coast trip on Tuesday against the Los Angeles Lakers. He played around 6 to 7 minutes and we never saw him again. So that's where he did injure his hip. And Tobias will be seen by the Pistons doctors in 2 weeks to see where he's at. I do want to say something. Reevaluated doesn't mean a timetable in which they'll return. It just means that they're set to see the Detroit Pistons doctors and the medical staff to see where their rehab is going in terms of their injury. Because I think sometimes when people see reevaluated, they think that's a timetable in which they'll return. It doesn't really mean that. Next is Jalen Duren. It says Pistons center Jalen Duren, right ankle sprain, will not travel with the team to Cleveland and will be reevaluated in 1 week. Now, Jalen Duren hurt his right ankle in the last game against the Miami Heat. If you guys watched the game, he was going for a drive and his ankle just bent in ways your ankle is just not supposed to bend. Looked very painful. JB said after the game, JB Bickerstaff said they wanted to see if he could continue to play on it, but he was just in a lot of discomfort, and they decided to not play him for the remainder of the game. And he didn't against the Heat. He didn't play a single minute in the second half. So he'll be seen again in a week to see where his right ankle is. And we know that Jalen Duren does have ankle issues. You look at 90% of his injuries throughout his young NBA career, a majority of them have been ankles. Does wear ankle braces. And you can see it in any pictures where they take pictures of his shoes. You can see those black ankle braces around his ankles. Even with a brace, he still sprained it. So hopefully, he's not out for too long, but there will be opportunities in the front court for other players on the bench to play. And the final injury in the injury report from the Pistons is Karis LeVert, right knee inflammation, and he will not travel with the team to Cleveland as well as he continues his treatment regimen. His status is day-to-day. So with Karis LeVert, this isn't anything new as it does retain to his knee. He's had knee issues since the season. And JB had said in a press conference after the game that his knee will just flare up at just really random times, and they've tried their best to just kind of contain it. But, he's going to be out, and I think how we can kind of segue into kind of like a next mini topic is what does the starting lineup look like now? Because now you have two starters in your front court and Tobias Harris and Jalen Duren that are going to be out. I think the backcourt will probably stay the same. I think you're still going to have a Cade Cunningham and a Duncan Robinson as your backcourt, Sar Thompson, small forward, but your front court is going to be changed. Now, I think there are two possible lineups that JB may rule out with this front court. And I think the first one is going to be Cade Cunningham, Duncan Robinson, Asar Thompson, Javonte Green, Isaiah Stewart. Now, I think you can kind of flip-flop Javonte and Asar out there. If you want Asar to play more power forward, you want Javonte to play more small forward, I think you can. I think that would probably be the most reserved starting lineup JB can roll out there without kind of depleting the backup forward in terms of like the second unit. To me, I think that that's the lineup that does make some sense for him. if I did have to guess. Not saying that I know what the starting lineup is going to be. I'm just taking an educated guess on what it might be. I think the second starting lineup is probably a lineup the fans want to see. I don't know how realistic it could be, but you never know because you are playing two teams in the Cleveland Cavaliers tomorrow and the New York Knicks on Monday, um, that are bigger. They have a lot more size in the front court than the Pistons do. And this lineup would be Cade Cunningham, Duncan Robinson, Asar Thompson, Paul Reed, Isaiah Stewart. Now, you can kind of flip flop both of them between power forward and center. Doesn't really matter where they're playing, but that would give you more size in the front court. The only thing I worry about is like foul trouble, one, and two, who's going to be your backup center and who's going to be your backup power forward. But I think that's a lineup that they could possibly roll out there. There could be some two-way and G League guys getting called up with this injury. I think the two guys that I would look at in particular would be Tolu Smith, since he is a two-way center for the Detroit Pistons. And one of the roster spots that they picked up on waivers is Isaac Jones as well. Both of those guys are big-time contributors for the Motor City Cruise. They could get their number called with Jalen Duren being out and Tobias Harris being out. You never know with injuries or foul trouble or whatever it may be. I think those are types of lineups you could see and maybe some call-ups as it does pertain to the G League. I know Chaz Lanier actually did get called down to the Motor City Cruise. They do have a game tonight against the Knicks G League affiliate. I can't remember what they're called, their G League team exactly, but should see Chaz Lanier, light it up. He's averaged like 30 points per game since he's been in the G League. But yeah, man, like I really hate to start the show off with injury news and new possible starting lineups. But hey, hopefully Tobias and Jalen Duren and Karis can get back healthy, and we don't have long lingering injuries in the year of 2026. Now, the next topic I did want to get into with you guys is sticking with the year of 2025, and NBA.com put out a list, and it's the top 10 players of 2025. Now, I did decide to compile a list for you guys to see and follow along. And we're going to be reading the top 10 and kind of going over it. So number 1 comes in as Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Number 2, Nikola Jokic. 3, Anthony Edwards. 4, Jalen Brunson. 5, Giannis Antetokounmpo. 6, Donovan Mitchell. 7, Cade Cunningham. 8, Luka Doncic. 9, Tyrese Halliburton. And 10, Jason Tatum. Now, their top 10 players of 2025 is the whole calendar year, because I saw some people saying like, why is Jalen Brunson, why is Anthony Edwards that high? You have to account January 1st, 2025 to December 31st of 2025. Now, I can see some people seeing Cade at 7 saying, I think Cade should be higher. I agree. I think you could argue him over Donovan Mitchell. I think you could even argue, over Giannis. Now, Giannis's success as a player has more to do with what's around him. His roster is dog shit, if we're being completely honest. It's been really bad. And I can't even really fault Giannis that bad, but he still does put up monster numbers with the Bucks when they're out there. But towards the end of 2025, they're barely an above 500 basketball team. And even last year, they were still a top seeded team, but this year it's just been really bad. So he started off the first part of 2025 in between January all the way up to April into the playoffs. Pretty decent, but the latter part of 2025 he hasn't done as well. So that's why I think you could make an argument for Cade being as high as top 5, right under Jalen Brunson there. And I know Pistons fans think that Cade Cunningham is better than Jalen Brunson, and that's a debate I'll let you guys have. I don't really like getting into player debates, even though I know my guy Eric Vincent got into a player debate this week. I don't know if you guys saw it. He was saying that he thought Luka Doncic wasn't better than Cade Cunningham, saying that Cade leaps him, which, man, like, that's why I don't get into player debates because I feel like there's so many different avenues and so many different arguments that you could make in terms of team success, accolades, wins, like everything like that. But did want to kind of talk about the top 10 um, players by the NBA in 2025. Um, Honestly, like the fact that Cade made it made me happy as a Piston fan. Again, I think you could argue him as high as 5 on this list, but I do wanna kinda transition into our next segment, and the next segment of this podcast is going to be more focused on this year, 2026. Now, the Detroit Pistons finished 2025, I think, on such a high note. This was a graphic from FanDuel Sports Network, by the way, and I do want to put it on the screen and read it for you guys because I think when we read this, it kind of just makes you reflect of like how much JB Bickerstaff has changed the culture in Detroit. So it says thrives in 2025. So the record for the Pistons is 55 and 28, dating back to January of 2025 to December of this past year. So 55 and 28 is a record. That is the third best NBA record. Third best record across the entire league, the Pistons. That's crazy to think about. Like we haven't been, the third best record in a calendar year since like the Flip Sonder years. It's been a really long time. So shout out to JB and the Pistons for finishing off 2025 on a high note. First playoff berth since 2019. First playoff win since May 2008. So we made the playoffs against the Knicks in the first round as the 6th seed, and we got our first playoff win since May of 2008. That makes me feel old because I was in high school in 2008. I think I was I was a freshman in 2008 when they won. Um, Pretty sure Antonio McDyess was on that team. Man, that's just a flashback. But the fact that they had not won a playoff series since 2008, that's crazy. That is honestly crazy. 13-game winning streak from October 29th to November 24th. That tied the longest in team history. It tied with, I believe, the Bad Boys had it, and then I don't remember what year it was. It might have been the flip year where they won a bunch of games. But yeah, 13-game winning streak, tied the longest in team history. I don't have it pulled up in front of me on Basketball Reference right now, but that 13-game winning streak, I think, really helped the Pistons get to the number 1 seed and hold that number 1 seed grounding for as long as they have. They still have it as we are recording this podcast today. But man, being in first for over 2 months is crazy to think about, especially with this team where it was just 2 seasons ago. So, winning 13 games, that winning streak was a lot of fun too. As a Piston fan, I'm being completely honest. Like, we really haven't had that many positive things like before JB Bickerstaff took over and Trajan Langdon came to this team. We were going through a rebuild, and rebuilds can be ugly. But we did get the players in the lottery like Kay, Jaden Ivey, Asar Thompson, Ron Holland, Stu, even though Stu wasn't a lottery pick. But you guys kind of get what I'm saying. Like you have your core, you got your foundation guys, and they've grown through this rebuild. And Cade Cunningham, speaking of him, first Piston since Blake Griffin to make All NBA. Now, Cade Cunningham made All NBA third team last year. So it's been a minute since the Detroit Pistons have had an All NBA player, but they really finished 2025 on an extremely high note. And the reason why I wanted to show that graphic is I have some New Year's resolutions for the Detroit Pistons, and I want to see them try to complete this year. With it being only January 3rd as we're recording this podcast today, I think it would be appropriate to do some kind of New Year's resolutions on the show. So here's my list, and I wanted to go over it with you guys. So number 1, I want the Detroit Pistons to improve their turnovers. Now, I don't like to watch games where the turnovers are up in the 20s, and I'll compromise it. If you can keep it around 11 to 12 a night, I think it's manageable to win a game. But games where we're having like, 18, 19, 20 plus turnovers a night and trying to come back in a game or trying to sustain a lead, I think we kind of shoot ourselves in the foot when we don't take care of the basketball there. But that's the one thing I want to see the Detroit Pistons improve on is the turnovers. That's number one on my list that I didn't make. Number two is free throws. Now, I think we can all agree we leave a lot of points at the free throw line. They have gotten better over the past couple of games, but some nights when we're doing these post game shows, it's like, yeah, they shot 65% from the free throw line. They shot 70% from the free throw line, and like some of these wins are maybe a possession or two. So if you take care, uh, if you take care of the points at the free throw line, I think some of these games won't be as close. Maybe you actually win a couple of games that you lost this year if you would have made more of your free throw. So number two, improve your free throws. I've never seen a team just miss free throws at the most opportunistic times with this team because I look at this team collectively. There are not a lot of bad free throw shooters, maybe outside of Asar. Asar has just kind of fallen off a cliff this year in terms of his free throw shooting. I don't know what's going on. But hopefully he can improve his free throws and kind of get back to like where he was at last year. I mean, if you can at least get Asar up to like a 70% free throw shooter, um, I'd be happy with that. I don't know about you guys. Number three, it does kind of relate to free throws, but arguing with the refs. Now, this is kind of nitpicky by me. I'd like to see them not get into officials' grill every time they don't get a free throw or they foul. I will say this as a Piston fan, we do play very physical defense. And I think oftentimes, we're very handsy the way we play defense, but then we argue with the call when, we're kind of just grabbing onto opponents or, whether, we feel like we've gotten fouled at the whether you're like going up for a layup or whether you got fouled on a shot, like they argue too much with the refs, and I think sometimes it's actually a distraction to the point where you're not staying focused or locked in. Like you're gonna get your respect. Like Kate just got to the free throw line last game 18 times. Like the refs are gonna start acknowledging the Detroit Pistons being a top seeded team in the East, and you have all NBA guys and Kate Cunningham. You just had Isaiah Stewart, who we're going to get into a little bit later. He just won an Eastern Conference award. So I think the Pistons are going to start getting respect from the officials league wide. But I think arguing with the refs and limiting getting technical fouls or just arguing with them in general, I think is something that could come back to bite us in the butt a couple of times if we're not careful, especially depending on the refs. There are certain officials that just do not like JB Bickerstaff and the Detroit Pistons, and we've seen it here firsthand doing these post-game shows and watching these Pistons games. But that's number three. Just kind of limit your interactions with the refs if you can. Number four, especially since we started the podcast today with injuries, stay healthy. Try to stay healthy. I know that's easier said than done, but I know last year we were without Jaden Ivey for 2025 because he broke his leg, but try to stay healthy as much as you can. I feel like injuries this year, we've had them, but they haven't been anything like season ending. Tobias has had several ankle sprains, now a hip sprain. JD just sprained his ankle. And the beginning of the season, I felt like we had like 5, 6 guys out. But I'd really like to see this team, stay healthy, limit their turnovers, hit their free throws, stay level headed. Don't try to, argue with the ref if you're not getting the call. Just get back there, get to the line, um, play defense. And those are the New Year's resolutions I do have for the Detroit Pistons in this one. I'd love to hear what any resolutions you think you want the Pistons to have for a majority of this season because I feel like we can all kind of find different areas where they think we can improve. Like I just thought of another one, maybe improve your half court offense a little bit, more. I feel like certain times we're a little bit stagnant. We have possessions where we don't score for 2-3 minutes straight because we can't generate anything out of the half court when we don't have opportunities to run. But I'm sure there are a lot of other resolutions you'd like to see the Detroit Pistons kind of hit. Now, before we get into Isaiah Stewart, I did want to put this on the screen if you guys are watching live on YouTube. And it kind of made me laugh because when we talked about the over under for the Detroit Pistons, right? To start the season, they were at 46 and a half. Now, this is over on FanDuel right now. If you were to place a bet on the Pistons regular season win total, it's set at 55 and a half. I look smart. I took it at 46 and a half before the season started. It's jumped all the way up 9 games to 55 and a half. Be really interested to see if any of you guys believe that the Detroit Pistons are winning 55 games this year, or if you're going to take a bet for 55 and a half, or if you were like me and you take it every year before the season starts. Last year, I don't even remember what the line was at, but they won over 44 games, and I was able to hit it as well. So maybe I'll have back-to-back years where I'm hitting this over with the Detroit Pistons. But I would really love to hear what you guys have to say about 55 and a half as a regular season um, total for the Detroit Pistons this year. Now, Isaiah Stewart did win an award, like I mentioned a little while ago. He won Eastern Conference Defensive Player of the Month, which shout out to Stu for that. I don't think this is going to be his last Defensive Player of the Month. Maybe eventually he will make an all defensive team, which I think he can. He just has to kind of play the minutes and the game criteria. Don't miss games and kind of be above that 20-minute a game stretch, which I think he'll definitely do being in the starting lineup during this last week. But I did kind of want to put another graphic on the screen from FanDuel, just kind of like looking at his defense this year. So this season, lowest in the NBA, 43.5% defended field goal at the rim. Stu is just locking down the paint. Like when players are trying to score on him, he's just locking it down. Blocks per game. Now he's third in the NBA, 1.9 blocks per game. He had 5 blocks last game when he was inserted into the starting lineup. You can definitely see his blocks per game going up a little bit, especially with him getting more starters minutes versus reserve minutes. And I think that's more impressive if you think about it, right? Like this guy's a reserve and he's almost getting 2 blocks a game. Incredible. 291 contested field goal attempts. That ranks 4th in the NBA. Like Stu has definitely deserved Eastern Conference Defensive Player of the Month. And this is a tweet from the Detroit Pistons. They made a really nice, cool graphic for him, talking about how he did win Eastern Conference Defensive Player of the Month. And I think we can all agree just the strides he's made since we've drafted him. Like when he first entered the league as a rookie, I think we all saw the defensive potential there, but I think over the last 2 seasons, he has really just developed as an elite rim protector and a shot blocker. Like his timing is impeccable. The way he times blocks, the way he just puts his body on the line to protect the rim. We really haven't had that in quite a long time on the Detroit Pistons. So I'm really happy for Isaiah Stewart that he was able to win his first Defensive Player of the Month in December. And maybe we will see him at an all defensive team. And hey, you never know. You never know. Defensive Player of the Year, I don't know. Wemby just got hurt again. I think a lot of people think that Bam Adebayo is going to win that award, which I was kind of curious because I was just scrolling the timeline to see like who people have for their awards, and I keep seeing a lot of media members mention Bam, but maybe it'll be Stu. Maybe it'll be Stu. Blocking over 2 shots a game in December. I think 2.2 to be exact, which is great. If you get more opportunity starting, more opportunities, off the bench, maybe you can kind of, put your name in defensive player of the year. Because I think he's one of those players that's kind of under the radar that doesn't really get appreciated nationally. I know we appreciate him here locally in Michigan and in Detroit, but I think more people are going to start paying attention to Isaiah Stewart and his rim protection because there's some of the blocks that he's had. Like the one that just popped in my mind. I don't know if you guys remember this one. It was against the Blazers. Shaden Sharp tried to just put him on a poster, and Stu ended up blocking it. It was a coach's challenge because they called a foul on him, but it was a pretty clean block. He got all ball, but really happy for him. Maybe we will see him in defensive player of the year conversations, and maybe as a finalist because I do think he does deserve it. Now, last week on the podcast, we had discussed Michael Porter Jr. and the conversation we had was there was a false report stating that the Pistons had already called Brooklyn about Michael Porter Jr. and had trade conversations, and that was debunked by Brett Siegel saying that like the Pistons had not even had conversations with the Brooklyn Nets about MPJ. Now, Mark Stein and Jake Fisher, if you guys are subscribed to their Substack, they wrote a piece about him in particular. And obviously, I do not pay for their Substack, but if you guys are paid for their Substack, this is a quote actually from their article from NBA Central. It says the Detroit Pistons are a team to watch for Michael Porter Jr. per Jake Fisher. And this is a quote from Jake. It says, quote, another team to monitor when it comes to Porter, league sources say, is Detroit. The Pistons, as we've been reporting, have signaled that they don't want to accelerate this pleasant surprise of a rebound from a 14-68 campaign in 23-24 with an over-aggressive move during this season. Now, after reading that quote from Jake Fisher, this is kind of just my thought process as it does pertain to the Detroit Pistons making big moves at the deadline. I don't really think they're going to. I think everything points to them making trades on the margins, making trades to address the team needs. And Trajan did that last deadline with Dennis Schroeder. I probably sound like a broken record. I think what he'll do this year is address the team needs. And what are the team needs? You may be asking. The team needs are more three-point shooting, more perimeter shooting. I mean, how many post-game shows have we done? And this team just shoots abysmal from three, like 6 out of 20 from three. And three-point shooting, I think, is very crucial as you get closer to the playoffs because the playoffs become a half-court game. You're going to need more perimeter shooting. You're not going to be able to outscore teams in the paint every night and live at the free throw line. You're going to have to try to add three-point shooters. And I think there are quite a few that are under the radar. I think there are some three-point specialists that could be available. We've mentioned a couple on the podcast before. I don't want to spoil it because I am making a video. I'm in the process of making a video and doing a podcast as we landscape 29 teams and 29 different targets that I think the Pistons could look at, which is coming out in a couple of days. And I'm really excited to drop that for you guys. But just to kind of wrap this podcast up, Pistons will make trades. I think Trajan is a very smart executive. He's not going to, trade 3-4 first-round picks for, a possible big move or a big splash. I think he'll think about it very carefully and address the team needs at the deadline while still keeping flexibility, while still keeping draft picks and keeping this team where they're at competitively. But that's just kind of my take on the whole Michael Porter Jr. saga. Like him as a player, he's easily a top 3 trade target this deadline. Outside of Giannis, outside of players like Zach LaVine, who could get moved again. I think he's going to be a player that gets a lot of interest from a lot of different teams because of his skill set and what he's doing in Brooklyn right now. But I think the Pistons will have a lot of competition. There are teams like Golden State, Milwaukee. I've heard Miami is a dark horse team that's looking at him as well. So just know that if the Pistons do getting into a bidding war, and if they're even interested in him, I think it just comes down to what Brooklyn is looking for in terms of play style, archetype. And they have a lot of guards. So they probably don't want a Jaden Ivey or a Marcus Sasser. They're probably looking for more forwards. So, right away, they'd probably be asking for Ron Holland or Sar Thompson in any type of Michael Porter Jr. trade, plus multiple first and a salary filler. So just kind of like sit on that if you're a Piston fan wanting Michael Porter Jr. That they probably don't want your guards. They just drafted 5. I doubt they want another one on their books, and they're still dealing with Cam Thomas. So, the people saying, "Give him Ivy," like, why would they want that? But I'm gonna wrap this podcast up. Did wanna, talk for about 30 minutes or so with you guys, just about, the Pistons news of the week, everything that's just kinda going out there. They do play the Cleveland Cavaliers tomorrow. They're going to be shorthanded. Be an early 2 o'clock game, but we will see you guys on the Pistons versus Cavs post game show. Should be a good game. Can't wait to talk to you guys then. Hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend. Take care. And as always, go Pistons. Peace.